Thank you, Jeremy. So, Dr. Tibble has given a very good overview about the virus and about the infections and what it causes in patients. Can I ask how many of you here are science students? So most of you are science. So you all know what a virus is, so you know what cirrhosis is, scarring of the liver. So I'm actually going to approach this from a slightly different angle from Dr. Tibble because he's given you the good kind of overview. I'm going to focus on the problem for us as a country and why we need to deal with this problem now, otherwise, in fact, hepatitis B and C, we need to act now. Actually, we need to act yesterday because we are already so far behind. And I'm actually going to talk on both B and C because I think they are something to be discussed in common. So I don't know how many of you have seen this graph. This shows the death rates under the age of 65 in England, in the UK. And this shows most of the chronic conditions, so stroke, cancer, even cancer, heart disease, diabetes, blood conditions. They're all either going down or they are stable. This is death from chronic liver disease. So in this country, the only chronic condition where the death rates are significantly increasing is chronic liver disease. Of these, about 50 to 60% are from alcohol, but the remainder are from chronic viral hepatitis B and C. And remember, many individuals who have B and C are also boozers, so they have a kind of a dual hit where they abuse alcohol and they have chronic viral hepatitis. Hence, we need to act now. So Dr. Tibble has already explained this to you, so I'm not going to go over it again. And worldwide, we have close to 600 million people infected with hepatitis B and C. We get about approximately 4.5 million who are infected every year. Guess how many have HIV and AIDS? To put things into perspective. Give me a number, any number.
100 million.
Nowhere near that. Okay, but see the importance, the urgency, the government influence, the programs, the funding that HIV has attracted, and see what we have attracted in hepatitis B and C. And when you actually look at death rates, and I never actually thought I would see this slide, this is data from the CDC, and when you actually look at the deaths from chronic hepatitis B, they are somewhat stable. When you look at deaths from hepatitis C, they've actually overtaken deaths from HIV. And this is really indeed alarming, where now we have more people dying from hepatitis C than we have from HIV and AIDS. So why is that the problem? Clearly because they are both silent and neglected diseases. Most importantly, most patients will not develop symptoms. So up to 80% of patients who have chronic hepatitis B, as Dr. Tibble explained, and hepatitis C will be completely asymptomatic. They won't even know that they have the infections, and they'll only come to know they have the infections once they go into advanced cirrhosis, i.e. they develop decompensation and or the complications of cirrhosis when it's too late. And at that stage, they need a transplant. It certainly hasn't been given the importance that HIV has. And guess what? Hepatitis B is 100 times more infectious than HIV. Hepatitis C is 10 times more infectious than HIV. Despite that, we still haven't been able to get the importance, the funding that we need to tackle these two diseases. Now, I'm not going to repeat this, but the only reason why I'm showing this is that with hepatitis B, once you get an acute infection, the time from acute infection to chronic infection is not days or weeks, it's years. So we have time. It's not that it's an urgency, I think, which is another reason why we haven't been able to become on sort of top of it, because it's not like HIV when you get exposed and you get AIDS and you get the problems immediately. With hepatitis B and C, it takes years from infection, if you're not treated, to develop chronic infection. Similarly for hepatitis C, once you get an acute infection, you get an inflammation. That inflammation takes years, up to 20 years, to develop cirrhosis. But this is what we don't want, because once you develop cirrhosis, in the natural history, you reach the stage where it's completely irreversible. So we need to act here, earlier on, before these individuals develop cirrhosis or scarring of the liver. So with hepatitis B, so the patients that we see here, if we see a migrant individual or a non-Caucasian individual from Southeast Asia, Indian subcontinent, most likely it is acquired vertically, i.e. from the mother to the child. But in the Western world, if you see someone Caucasian, invariably it is acquired sexually. And Dr. Tibble again has shown this, but the reason I'm showing this again is that in these high areas where the prevalence is higher than 7%, actually in some countries it can be as high as 20%. So in some of the sub-Saharan African countries, you can have 1 in 5 individuals who will actually have a positive test for hepatitis B. Now the UK is low prevalence, so our prevalence varies from 0.3 to 0.5%, so we are extremely in the low prevalence area. For hepatitis C, unlike hepatitis B where it is vertical transmission, the main risk factor, so in this country, if you see someone with hepatitis C, in 90% of the time it is because they are drug users. So 90% of the individuals in this country, unlike some other countries, the main risk factor for hepatitis C is injecting drug use, even the ones. So if you even dabble in it once after a party or whatever, that is enough to get it. Unfortunately, most people don't even know that they've got it. But it's completely asymptomatic, very few people develop symptoms. And then we have lots of other risk factors, but the main one is injecting drug use. And when you look at the prevalence of hepatitis C antibodies in injecting drug users in the UK over time, it hasn't really changed. It's still running around 45 to 50%, despite all the initiatives, despite all the needle exchange programs, despite all the government programs, the FACEIT program, whatever, we still haven't managed to reduce this. And guess what's the prevalence in Brighton? So if you go around to the substance misuse service and test individuals there, what's the prevalence? Are we above or are we below this 50%? We are indeed above. So our recent work shows that about 60% are positive. Okay, these are the more alarming factors, so the figures. So when you look at the people who are hospitalized with end-stage liver disease from hepatitis C, it's going up. There's no doubt about that. So 500 about 10 years ago, going to almost 2,500, so 5 times increase. If you look at deaths from hepatitis C and end-stage liver disease and liver cancer, again going up. Hepatitis B, as I've said, is somewhat stable. And if you look at the projected increase in both compensated cirrhosis and decompensated cirrhosis, if we continue with the current levels of treatment, which I'll explain to you what they are, this is what it is going to be. It's definitely going to go up. And if you remember that each time someone with cirrhosis comes into hospital, it costs at least 10K. Each time you transplant someone with cirrhosis, just for the transplant, it's about 60K. Just sort of forget all the post-transplant care. Just the actual hospitalization for that transplant is about 60K. So, when we look at the, I think, Lukman, you wanted some data on migrants and the prevalence of, so when you look at the migrants in various European countries, we are up here. So we are kind of not as high as some countries. I don't even know where this country is. Does anyone know where this?
Austria, Switzerland.
Oh, sorry, I'm ignorant, so I didn't even know where that country was. Anyway, so we are here, so we are about 9% compared to some other countries where it's a lot higher. And in the UK, I didn't know this either actually, 50% of the migrant population are actually from the Indian subcontinent, so that's about 1.5 million. About 25% are from Africa, and the rest are a mixture. And when you look at the prevalence of hepatitis B, for example, in the UK it's about 0.2 to 0.5%. If you look at some of these countries that we've already discussed, it can be far higher. So in countries in Eastern Europe, it can be up to 7% as we've discussed. And in some of the African countries, as I indicated, the prevalence of hepatitis B can be as high as 20%. And similarly for hepatitis C, in the UK, the vast majority of people with hepatitis C are still Caucasian. However, the prevalence of hepatitis C is also higher in the migrant population. And if you look at, for example, prevalence in South Asians, it is about close to 2.5%. The national sort of prevalence is about 0.5%, so it's about 5 times higher. And when you look at East Europeans, it's even higher, it's about 7%. So both hepatitis B and C definitely have a higher prevalence in the migrant population. So what is the situation of hepatitis B in the UK? So 90% of patients that we see with hepatitis B will be in the migrant population, because as Dr. Tibble explained, if you develop hepatitis B as a child or vertically, 90% will become chronic. If you develop it as an adult, like most Caucasians do, you will clear the infection. We get about almost 4,000 to 5,000 new infections per year, of whom about 300 will become chronic. We get a net migration of about 6,500 people with chronic hepatitis B per year into the country. And from the Hepatitis B UK Foundation, the hepatitis B rates have doubled in the past 5 years, so we think we have over 300,000 people now. But I suspect this is still an underestimate, and over 50% of this is doubling due to migrants. And when we talk of the issue of vaccination, whether hepatitis B vaccination should be universal, I'm a firm believer that it should be universal. It's such a cheap, effective vaccine. It's been there for the last more than 30 years. It's effective, and I think we need to follow the example of the other developed countries, despite our low prevalence, because each time you get these infections and about 300 become chronic, and the cost of actually treating these chronic infections is extensive. So in the UK we have, again, this is probably underestimated, but we have around 200,000 people with hepatitis C. Most of them are current or past drug users, and predominantly they will be Caucasian. So why haven't we been able to tackle this problem? I think there is still a strong stigma associated with hepatitis B and C. I work in the community strongly with substance misusers. They feel very much disfranchised, they feel very much isolated, they don't like coming to the hospitals, they don't like engaging with the hospital physicians. And so far the treatment of hepatitis B and C, because of the complicated nature of the drugs, has largely been hospital based. And then it's become very, very apparent that less than 5% of these individuals are actually going to make the journey from their GP practice or from the substance misuse clinics to the hospital. Most of them are asymptomatic, they're vulnerable, they're disfranchised, and there's obviously this ongoing migration. So the other issue is, which I've indicated, is that they just do not engage with the hospital service, so with the hospital services. So we had done this study at the substance misuse service. Less than 30% of the substance misusers were actually vaccinated, or when we offered them vaccination, only about 40% accepted it. When we identified about 60 people with hepatitis C in the community, none had been treated. Those 60 individuals knew for years they had hepatitis C, they had been offered treatment, none had been treated, and less than 5% actually made it to the hospital. Now in those days, the treatments for hepatitis C were far more complicated, prolonged, drugs were quite toxic. So hopefully we are hoping that with the newer drugs, things might change. Now when we come to migration, it's very obvious that when you have someone who's migrating, they are actually migrating from a difficult background where the prevalence of hepatitis B and C are quite high. Now we have different types of migration, but it's not always from the disadvantaged. Even we travel a lot now to countries where hepatitis B and C are high. So for example, a lot of us may have a trip to Africa, and I work at King's as well, and I was doing a clinic there about 4 months ago. Saw a young Caucasian English girl who went to Africa for a holiday. One night of sexual indiscretion, she ended up with acute hepatitis B, developed acute liver failure, ended up with a transplant. Had she been vaccinated, that probably wouldn't have happened. So migration is both ways. It's us going to countries where there's a high prevalence of hepatitis B, and obviously migrants coming from countries to us. So what do we do? Well, we need to prevent new infections. We need to increase awareness of infection. We need to increase diagnosis. And we clearly need to get the individual. There's no point making a diagnosis if you don't treat. In my personal view is that with hepatitis B, despite the low prevalence, we have to have universal vaccination. And I think the hepatology community has discussed this with the Department of Health on a number of occasions, but at present, as Dr. Tibble has said, it's only going to be vaccination of the newborns, contacts, and others. For hepatitis C, we obviously have to stop the high-risk behavior, which is injecting drug use, and provide clean needles. Increased awareness of hepatitis B and C, and we have a number of charities, the Hepatitis B Foundation, the Hepatitis C Trust, which are trying to increase awareness, and I think having some success. There are a number of government campaigns. I'm sure some of you may know the Face It campaign that the government organized a couple of years ago, which basically was on the radio, on GP practices, hospitals, to increase awareness. And now they've also introduced a GP certification course to increase awareness amongst GPs to test for these viruses in the high-risk population. And nationally, there is a national guidelines that primary care trusts and or GP practices have to do case finding of high-risk people. They have to arrange contact tracing and treat those who are not treated. And clearly, at present, we have a policy to test pregnant women for hepatitis B, but not hepatitis C. So, which individuals do we screen? Well, it's obvious, the migrants, the substance and alcohol users, pregnant women, and recently the Department of Health began an awareness campaign for hepatitis C in South Asians. So, amongst the current target migrant UK population of 3 million, about 120,000 will have chronic hepatitis B, of whom 20,000 will develop cirrhosis in 20 years if not treated, which is a large number. We have about 30,000 with chronic hepatitis C, of whom about 5,000 or probably more will develop cirrhosis. So we are talking of large numbers. And of the women that we test antenatally, we test a fair amount. The prevalence of hepatitis B remains low, and most of these women were not UK born. So why should we screen someone? We screen them to pick up the disease early before they develop scarring or before they develop cirrhosis. And once you pick it up early, you treat them to prevent the cirrhosis complications, which are not nice. You can get fluid in your belly, you turn yellow, you develop liver cancer, and you develop bleeding from your stomach. And once you develop any of these complications, then it's too late, and then you basically need a transplant. If we screen individuals, we can offer them alcohol counseling, and clearly, if we reduce high-risk behavior, we can then prevent onward transmission. For hepatitis C now, we have wonderful new drugs, so we don't have to use the horrible interferon anymore. We have fantastic new drugs. Harvoni is one of the ones which has just been licensed. There's another one which is coming out. The treatments are far safer, but they are expensive. They cost 40K, but it still will be cheaper to treat someone rather than let them develop cirrhosis and then manage that and the transplant. And currently, we have treated less than 20% of the patients. So the 40,000 people that we have with hepatitis C, less than 20% actually have been treated. So we have the vast pool, the vast majority in the UK, or at least in England, not in Scotland, in England, are still not treated. And clearly there have been lots of modeling exercises which have been done, and they indicate that even with the newer drugs, which are far more effective, far more safer, unless we increase the treatment significantly and diagnose significantly more people, we're not going to impact the hepatitis C burden. We have very good drugs for hepatitis B, but they need long-term treatment, but it's probably again cost-effective to treat them rather than leave patients not treated. Now, since these patients don't come to us, we have to go to them. So for the last couple of years, we have various community initiatives where we are going into the community, into the substance misuse clinics, where we are screening these patients and we're treating them in the community. So we have this project based at the largest substance misuse service. What we do is often these patients who inject drugs have very poor access. So we use what is called as a dry blood spot testing, which is a little finger prick testing like you do for diabetes. It makes an instant, or not instant diagnosis, but it makes a fairly rapid diagnosis of hepatitis B and C. And we currently have offered it now to about 140 patients, of whom less than half have accepted it, but the main reason that they haven't accepted is that they've all been recently tested. So we've identified 70 people right now in the community with hepatitis C, and guess how many have been treated of those 70? None, 0. They've all had the infection for years, but none has been treated. So we are now doing a test which is a FibroScan, which is this little machine here which gives you an idea of scarring in the liver. Previously, we had to shove needles into the liver and take pieces of liver tissue out. Now we have this wonderful new machine. It's non-invasive. It gives us an idea of scarring. And what we have found is that despite the young age, most of them are less than 40 years of age, about 40% already have clinically significant scarring, and about 1 in 5 already have cirrhosis. So, currently the chronic liver disease burden from hepatitis B and C is a major issue, and we need to actively find cases, offer prompt treatment, otherwise, as we are already seeing, we are going to be in serious trouble. That's my last slide.